My best friend stole my baby name, so I stole her baby's inheritance. Jenna and I got pregnant at the same time. We'd been best friends since middle school, went through everything together, and being pregnant together felt like fate. We'd spend hours planning nurseries, comparing ultrasound photos, complaining about morning sickness. 6 months into my pregnancy, I told Jenna about the name I'd chosen if I had a girl, Eleanor. It was my grandmother's name, and she'd told me since I was little that I should use it for my first daughter. The name meant everything to our family. My grandmother Eleanor raised me after my mom died, and using her name felt like honoring that. Jenna loved it, said it was beautiful and classic and perfect. 2 weeks later, Jenna went into early labor at 32 weeks. Her daughter was born premature but healthy, and when I visited the hospital, I saw the name on the bassinet, Eleanor Grace. I stood there, staring at that card, feeling like I'd been punched. Jenna smiled at me from the bed and said she hoped I didn't mind, but the name had just felt so right when the baby came early, and she'd been so scared. She said it was an homage to our friendship. I left the hospital and cried in my car for an hour. My grandmother called that night asking if I'd heard about Jenna's baby, and I could hear something strange in her voice, tight, controlled. She asked what name I was planning to use now, and I told her I hadn't decided yet. 3 weeks later, I had my daughter and named her Sophie. It's a beautiful name, but every time I said it, I felt this hollow ache because it wasn't the name I'd planned for her entire life. Jenna and I stayed friends, but something had shifted between us. She'd text me photos of baby Eleanor constantly, ask me to babysit, invite me to every milestone, and I'd smile and show up because that's what friends do, even when your heart is breaking. Then about 4 months after Eleanor was born, Jenna started acting weird. She'd show up at my house unannounced with the baby, staying for hours, talking about how blessed she felt, how Eleanor was such a gift, how she couldn't imagine life without her, but her eyes had this desperate quality I couldn't understand. One day, a letter came to my house by mistake. It was addressed to Jenna, but delivered to my address because the sender had my house number with her street name. I called Jenna to tell her I'd drop it off, but she panicked, actually panicked, told me to throw it away. She didn't need it. It wasn't important. I looked at the return address after we hung up. It was from a law office downtown, the same law office my grandmother used. My stomach dropped. I opened the letter even though I knew I shouldn't. It was a notice about a trust disbursement meeting, language about beneficiary verification and legal name documentation for minor children. I drove to my grandmother's house that afternoon and asked her directly what was going on. She looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. She told me she'd set up a trust 20 years ago, $5 million to be given to her first great-grandchild who carried her name. She told my mom about it before she died, and my mom had told me when I turned 18. That's why the name Eleanor meant everything to me. It wasn't just sentimental. It was my daughter's entire future, and Jenna had known. She'd known the whole time. My grandmother said when she'd heard Jenna use the name, she'd been furious, felt it was a betrayal. But legally, the trust said first great-grandchild named Eleanor. That meant Jenna's baby, not mine. I spent 3 days barely sleeping, thinking about what Jenna had done, how she'd stolen not just a name, but $5 million from my daughter's future, how she'd smiled to my face while taking everything I'd planned for. Then I remembered something. My grandmother's trust had very specific language. The great-grandchild had to be named after her with intention and family connection, had to truly carry her legacy. I went back to my grandmother with an idea. What if we could prove Jenna's use of the name wasn't legitimate, that it was stolen, fraudulent, not a true honoring of the family legacy? My grandmother listened to everything. How Jenna had taken the name, knowing what it meant to me, how she'd used it as manipulation, how baby Eleanor had no real connection to our family history. And then my grandmother made a phone call to her lawyer, and what happened in that meeting changed everything. The rest of the story is on my channel or linked below. I wake up the next morning with my grandmother's words still ringing in my ears. The trust, the betrayal, $5 million that should have been Sophie's future, stolen by my so-called best friend. My hands shake as I make Sophie's bottle. The reality of what Jenna has done settling over me like a heavy blanket. My phone rings at 9:17 a.m. It's my grandmother. I've spoken with Martin, she says, her voice clipped and businesslike. Martin is her attorney, the one who drafted the trust 20 years ago. We have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning at 10. I need you there. What about Jenna? I ask, bouncing Sophie gently on my hip. She'll be there too. There's a pause. I've made sure of it. The steel in my grandmother's voice reminds me that she didn't build her life by letting people take advantage of her. Eleanor Williams might be in her 70s, but she's still the woman who took over my grandfather's business after he died and tripled its value before selling it. She's not someone who gives up without a fight. I'll be there, I promise. The law office is housed in a glass and steel building downtown. I arrive 15 minutes early, Sophie in her carrier. The receptionist smiles at us and directs me to a conference room on the 12th floor. My grandmother is already there, dressed in a tailored navy suit, her silver hair perfectly styled. She's speaking in low tones with a balding man I recognize as Martin. She looks up when I enter, her face softening at the sight of Sophie. There's my beautiful great-granddaughter, she says, taking the carrier from me. Sophie gurgles happily, recognizing her great-grandmother immediately. Has Jenna arrived yet? I ask, setting my diaper bag down. Not yet, my grandmother replies, her expression hardening slightly. But she'll be here. Martin clears his throat. Eleanor has explained the situation to me. I must say, it's quite unprecedented. I'm about to respond when the door opens, and Jenna walks in, looking flustered. She's carrying Eleanor in a baby wrap against her chest, her diaper bag overflowing with supplies. Her husband Derek trails behind her, looking confused and slightly annoyed. Sorry we're late, she says, not meeting my eyes. Traffic was terrible. My grandmother merely nods, her face expressionless. Let's begin, shall we? We all take seats around the large conference table. Martin opens a leather portfolio and removes several documents. As you all know, he begins. 20 years ago, Eleanor Williams established a trust in the amount of $5 million. The beneficiary was designated as her first great-grandchild who carried her name, Eleanor. Jenna shifts in her seat, adjusting baby Eleanor slightly. I notice her hands are trembling. However, Martin continues, the trust has specific language language regarding the naming requirement. It states that the child must be named Eleanor, with intention and family connection, and must truly carry the legacy of Eleanor Williams. Derek looks at Jenna sharply. What does that mean exactly? Martin adjusts his glasses. It means that simply naming a child Eleanor is not sufficient. There must be a legitimate family connection to the name, a genuine intention to honor Eleanor Williams' legacy. Our daughter is named Eleanor, Jenna says quickly. That's all the trust requires. My grandmother's eyes flash. Is it, Jenna? Tell me, what made you choose the name Eleanor? Jenna swallows hard. I've always loved the name. It's classic and beautiful. Really? I say, unable to contain myself any longer. Because you never mentioned loving it until after I told you it was my grandmother's name and that I was planning to use it for my daughter. Derek looks between us, confusion evident on his face. Jenna told me she'd always wanted to name our daughter Eleanor if we had a girl. When exactly did she tell you that? My grandmother asks sharply. Derek hesitates. I don't know. When we found out we were having a girl, I guess. Around 6 months into the pregnancy. After she knew about my plans, I say quietly. After I shared with her how important the name was to our family. Martin clears his throat again. The trust is quite clear. The child must have a legitimate family connection to the name Eleanor. Can you demonstrate such a connection, Mrs. Parker? Jenna's face pales. I named her as a tribute to our friendship, she says, gesturing between us, because of how close we are. That's not a family connection, my grandmother says flatly. The trust also requires documentation, Martin adds, flipping through his papers. Birth certificates, family records, written statements of intent made prior to the child's birth. Do you have any such documentation showing your family connection to the name Eleanor? Jenna looks panicked now. I don't need documentation. I named my daughter Eleanor. That's all that matters. Actually, Martin says, it's not. The trust was specifically written to prevent exactly this sort of situation. A name carries meaning, history, legacy. It's not just a label to be appropriated. Derek turns to Jenna, his expression hardening. Did you know about this trust when you chose our daughter's name? Jenna's silence is damning. The letter, I say quietly. The one that was delivered to my address by mistake. That's when I found out. But you already knew, didn't you? That's why you panicked when I said I'd bring it to you. I didn't, Jenna starts, but my grandmother cuts her off. Don't lie, Jenna. Not here. My grandmother's voice is ice. You knew about the trust. You knew what the name Eleanor meant to our family. And you deliberately took it, knowing what you were stealing from Sophie's future. Tears well in Jenna's eyes. It's not fair, she whispers. Eleanor was born first. The trust says the first great-grandchild named Eleanor, with family connection, Martin emphasizes. The trust is quite explicit about that requirement. I have another question, my grandmother says, her gaze fixed on Jenna. If you truly chose the name Eleanor because you always loved it, why did you wait until after my granddaughter told you she was planning to use it? Why not mention it earlier during all those months you spent planning your nurseries together? Jenna has no answer. Martin slides a document across the table. This is a formal notice that we will be conducting a review of the trust's conditions. Until we can verify legitimate family connection, no disbursements will be made. Derek stands abruptly. This is ridiculous. You can't just change the rules because you don't like who gets the money. We're not changing any rules, Martin replies calmly. We're enforcing the existing conditions of the trust as written 20 years ago. Jenna grabs Derek's arm. Let's go, she says, her voice breaking. We'll get our own lawyer. As they gather their things, Jenna pauses beside me. I thought we were friends, she whispers. I look up at her, at the baby she named to steal my daughter's inheritance. So did I reply. After they leave, Martin turns to my grandmother. We have a strong case for disqualification based on the lack of family connection. The trust's language gives you considerable discretion as the trustee. My grandmother nods, then looks at Sophie sleeping peacefully in her carrier. What about Sophie? She asks. Is there any way to amend the trust to include her? Martin considers this. The trust can be amended by you as the grantor. We could add language about spiritual connection rather than just the name itself. My grandmother reaches over and takes my hand. I want Sophie to have what was always meant for her. A child doesn't need to carry my name to carry my legacy. As we leave the office, I feel a weight lifting from my shoulders. Jenna may have stolen a name, but she won't steal Sophie's future. My grandmother's arm wraps around me as we wait for the elevator. Family isn't just about names, she says, looking down at Sophie. It's about intention, about love, about doing right by the people who matter. She presses the button for the lobby, and I intend to make sure that justice is done. I kiss her cheek, grateful beyond words for her strength and determination. Thank you, I whisper. She smiles, the fierce protectiveness in her eyes reminding me where I get my own strength from. No one messes with my family, she says simply. No one. The days after our meeting at Martin's office are tense. I'm constantly checking my phone, expecting angry messages from Jenna, but there's only silence. It's the kind of silence that feels like the calm before a storm, and I find myself jumping every time my phone buzzes with a notification. Sophie is teething, which means neither of us is sleeping much. At 3 a.m., as I rock her in the nursery we decorated together, Jenna and I. Back when I thought we were sharing the most important journey of our lives, my grandmother calls. I couldn't sleep, she says without preamble. I've been thinking about the trust. I shift Sophie to my other shoulder, her warm weight comforting against my chest. What about it? I'm changing it, she says decisively. Martin's drawing up the papers tomorrow. I want you to come by in the afternoon to sign as a witness. Change it how? I ask, though I already have an idea. The original language focused too much on the name itself. I'm amending it to recognize spiritual connection, rather than just the literal name. Her voice softens. Sophie may not be named Eleanor, but she carries more of my spirit than that other child ever could. The relief that floods through me is so intense that I have to sit down on the ottoman. Thank you, I whisper. Don't thank me, my grandmother says firmly. This is justice, not charity. That woman tried to steal from my family using the most underhanded means possible. I won't allow it. After we hang up, I sit in the dim glow of Sophie's nightlight, thinking about how quickly life can change. 6 months ago, Jenna and I were planning our baby's futures together. Now we're on opposite sides of a battle neither of us could have imagined. My grandmother's house looks the same as always, elegant, timeless, filled with memories. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimes 3 times as I enter, Sophie strapped to my chest in her carrier. Martin is already there, papers spread across the dining room table. There she is, my grandmother says, rising to greet us. She kisses my cheek and then Sophie's forehead. My girls. Martin adjusts his glasses and gestures for me to sit. I've drafted the amendment as Eleanor requested. Essentially, we're expanding the definition of legacy beyond the name itself. He slides a document toward me. The legal language is dense, but I understand the gist. The trust will now recognize spiritual and character connection as being equal to or greater than nominal connection. There's specific language about embodying the values, spirit, and character of Eleanor Williams, and carrying forward her legacy through actions rather than merely through name. This creates a path for Sophie to qualify, Martin explains, as Eleanor's great-granddaughter who demonstrates the qualities and values that Eleanor herself holds dear. What about Jenna's daughter? I ask, though I already know the answer. She would need to demonstrate the same qualities and connection, Martin says carefully. But given the circumstances of her naming, that seems unlikely. My grandmother's expression is steel. The amendment also gives me, as trustee, final discretion in determining who truly embodies my legacy. I think we all know where that decision will lead. I sign where Martin indicates, my signature a witness to my grandmother's amendment. As I do, I feel a weight lifting from my shoulders. Sophie may not have gotten Eleanor's name, but she'll have the future that was meant for her. Jenna won't take this well, I say, voicing the worry that's been gnawing at me. I expect not, my grandmother replies, her tone unconcerned. Martin, when will the amendment be officially filed? By close of business today. I'll send formal notification to Mrs. Parker immediately after. The notification arrives faster than I expected. Just after dinner, my phone explodes with texts from Jenna. How dare you? You can't just change the rules because you're jealous my daughter was born first. This is my daughter is entitled to that money. We're getting a lawyer. You'll be hearing from us. I don't respond. There's nothing to say that wouldn't escalate the situation further. Instead, I send screenshots of the messages to my grandmother and Martin, documenting Jenna's reaction. The next morning, an email arrives from someone named Lawrence Goldstein, Esquire, informing me that he represents Jenna and Derek Parker in the matter of the Eleanor Williams Trust. The language is formal but threatening, claiming my grandmother's amendment is a transparent attempt to divert funds from the rightful beneficiary and demanding an immediate meeting. I forward it to Martin without comment. Within an hour, he calls me. This is exactly what we expected, he says, sounding almost pleased. Mr. Goldstein is posturing, but their legal position is weak. The trust gives your grandmother broad powers as both grantor and trustee. What should I do? I ask, pacing my kitchen with Sophie in one arm. Nothing. Let me handle the legal communications. But, he pauses, if you have any evidence that Jenna knew about the trust before naming her daughter, now would be a good time to compile it. After we hang up, I scroll through years of text messages between Jenna and me. There it is, the day I told her I was planning to name my daughter Eleanor after my grandmother. Her response, that's so special. Family names are so meaningful. And then, 2 days later, hey, I've been thinking about names too. What would you think if we both used Eleanor? It could be so cute our daughters sharing a name. I'd responded, that would be confusing. Plus, it's such a special family name for us. My mom always told me how important it was that the first great-granddaughter carry on Grandma Eleanor's name. Jenna had backed off immediately. You're right, of course. It's your family name. I'll keep thinking. Then came her early labor at 32 weeks. The text from Derek, baby girl arrived, 5 pounds 2 ounces. Jenna wants to surprise you with a name. I remember the shock I felt seeing the name card on her hospital bassinet, Eleanor Grace Parker. The way Jenna watched my face, waiting for my reaction. The hour I spent crying in my car afterward. I screenshot all of these exchanges and several more, including one where Jenna specifically asked about my grandmother's reaction to her using the name, sent just 2 days after Eleanor was born. I compiled them into a document and send it to Martin with the subject line, evidence of prior knowledge. His response is immediate, this is excellent. Their claim that the name choice was innocent is clearly contradicted by these messages. The meeting is set for the following week at Martin's office. Jenna and Derek arrive with their lawyer, a balding man with an expensive suit and an aggressive handshake. My grandmother sits beside me, regal in her navy pantsuit, while Martin arranges documents on the conference table. Let's get straight to the point, Goldstein begins. My clients named their daughter Eleanor because they genuinely liked the name. The subsequent amendment to the trust is a transparent attempt to disinherit their daughter after the fact. Martin smiles thinly. The amendment simply clarifies the original intent of the trust, which was to benefit a great-grandchild who truly carries Eleanor Williams' legacy, not someone named Eleanor in an opportunistic grab for funds. That's absurd, Jenna interjects, her face flushed. We had no idea about the trust when we named our daughter. This is where Martin slides a folder across the table. These text messages suggest otherwise, Mrs. Parker. Jenna's face pales as her lawyer reviews the screenshots. I can see the exact moment he realizes their position has weakened, his shoulders slump slightly, and he adjusts his tie. These messages don't prove anything, Goldstein says, but his tone lacks conviction. My clients maintain they chose the name independently. My grandmother leans forward. Let me be clear. I established this trust 20 years ago to ensure my legacy continued through a great-grandchild who would truly carry my name and spirit, not someone named Eleanor as a cash grab. Derek looks confused, turning to Jenna. You told me you'd always loved the name Eleanor. Jenna's eyes dart between her husband and her lawyer. I did. I do. Then why? My grandmother asks coolly. Did you never mention it until after my granddaughter told you she was planning to use it? Why did you ask if you could both use it then back down, only to use it anyway once your daughter was born first? The room falls silent. Derek stares at Jenna, realization dawning on his face. The amendment stands, Martin says into the silence. As trustee, Eleanor Williams has determined that Sophie demonstrates the qualities and values that embody her legacy, regardless of name. This isn't over, Goldstein warns, gathering his papers. We'll take this to court court if necessary. You're welcome to try, Martin replies. But I should warn you that the trust document gives Miss Williams broad discretion as trustee. The courts are generally reluctant to override such discretion without compelling evidence of bad faith. As they stand to leave, Jenna grabs my arm. How could you do this to me? To Eleanor? She's innocent in all this. I look into the eyes of the woman I thought was my best friend. That's exactly what I asked myself when you stole a name you knew was precious to my family. A name that carried history and meaning for us, not just a price tag. After they leave, Martin turns to us with a satisfied expression. They'll bluster and threaten, but their case is weak. The amendment is solid, and those text messages undermine their entire claim of innocence. My grandmother reaches over and squeezes my hand. It's going to be okay, she says. Sophie will have what was always meant for her. As we walk to our cars, my phone buzzes with a text from Jenna. This isn't about the money, it's about my daughter's future. Why can't you understand that? I don't reply. Instead, I look at Sophie sleeping peacefully in her carrier, unaware of the storm swirling around her. In this moment, I'm grateful she's too young to understand betrayal, too innocent to know that sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who hurt us deepest. My grandmother walks us to my car. Family protects family, she says, kissing Sophie's forehead. Always remember that. I nod, buckling Sophie's carrier into the back seat. I know, and Sophie will know it too. That, my grandmother says with fierce pride, is exactly why she's my true legacy. The mediation room feels too small, too warm, despite the air conditioning. It's been a week since our meeting at Martin's office, and Jenna's lawyer has requested this mediation session as a good faith effort to resolve the dispute without court intervention. I suspect it's really about testing how solid our position is before they commit to expensive litigation. Sophie is with my mother today. I didn't want her anywhere near this confrontation. Jenna and Derek sit across the table with their lawyer Goldstein between them. Derek looks uncomfortable, shifting in his chair and avoiding eye contact with everyone. Jenna's eyes are puffy, like she's been crying, but there's something hard in her expression that I recognize the same look she had when we competed for class president in 8th grade. She's not here to compromise. She's here to win. My grandmother sits beside me, back straight, hands folded neatly on the table. She looks calm, but I can feel the tension radiating from her. Martin arranges a small recording device in the center of the table. For the record, he says, pressing a button, this is a voluntary mediation regarding the Eleanor Williams Trust. All parties have consented to this recording. Goldstein clears his throat. My clients are here in good faith to resolve this unfortunate misunderstanding. We believe the original trust language is clear. The first great-grandchild named Eleanor is the beneficiary. That child is Eleanor Grace Parker. The trust language is indeed clear, Martin counters smoothly. It specifies that the child must be named Eleanor with intention and family connection, and must truly carry the legacy of Eleanor Williams. The recent amendment simply clarifies what was always implied. Amendments made after the fact. Goldstein begins, but my grandmother interrupts him. Let's not waste time with legal posturing, she says, her voice sharp. We all know why we're here. Jenna deliberately named her daughter after learning about the trust. She did it to steal what was meant for my great-granddaughter. That's not true, Jenna protests, but her voice wavers slightly. I've always loved the name Eleanor. Then why? I ask quietly. Did you never mention it until after I told you it was my grandmother's name? Why did you specifically ask if we could both use it, then back down when I explained how important it was to my family? Derek turns to look at Jenna, confusion evident on his face. You told me you'd always planned to use that name. Jenna's cheeks flush. I just never mentioned it to anyone. Including your husband? My grandmother asks pointedly. The room falls silent. I can see Derek processing this, his brow furrowed. Mrs. Parker, Martin says, his tone deliberately gentle. We have text messages showing that you knew about the family significance of the name Eleanor. We have evidence suggesting you knew about the trust before naming your daughter. If this goes to court, all of this will become part of the public record. Something shifts in Jenna's expression, a flicker of panic. She glances at Derek, then at her lawyer, who gives her a slight nod. Fine, she says suddenly. Yes, I knew about the trust. I overheard you talking to your mother about it at your baby shower. She looks directly at me. You were in the kitchen, and I came in to get more ice. You didn't see me, but I heard everything about the $5 million for the first great-grandchild named Eleanor. The admission hits me like a physical blow, even though I'd already figured it out. Hearing her say it out loud, in this sterile room with witnesses, makes it real in a way it wasn't before. So you deliberately took the name knowing what it meant to our family? My grandmother asks, her voice dangerously quiet. Jenna's defiance crumbles. It wasn't just about the money. We needed it. Derek's business was struggling, and we had medical bills from the pregnancy complications. When I heard about the trust, it seemed like fate, like a solution to all our problems. A solution that required stealing from my child, I say, my voice shaking with anger. Your child wasn't even born yet, Jenna snaps, and you could have still named her Eleanor. You chose not to. Because you took the name. I can feel my control slipping. You knew what it meant to my family, and you took it anyway. What was I supposed to do? Have two Eleanors in the same friend group? Have our daughters share a name that you stole? Derek looks stunned. Jenna, you told me you chose the name to honor your friendship. You never said anything about money. I was trying to help our family, Jenna says, tears welling in her eyes. I did it for us, for Eleanor, my grandmother repeats coldly. A child you named with calculated intent to claim money that wasn't meant for her. Martin clears his throat. Given Mrs. Parker's admission that she named her daughter with knowledge of the trust, I believe the intention and family connection requirement clearly hasn't been met. The amended trust language simply reinforces what was already there. Goldstein shifts uncomfortably. My client's admission doesn't change the fact that her daughter was the first great-grandchild named Eleanor. The spirit of the original trust. The spirit? My grandmother's laugh is sharp. I wrote the trust. I think I know its spirit better than anyone. It was never about simply having my name. It was about carrying my legacy. Which is why, Martin adds, Eleanor Williams has exercised her right as trustee to formally remove Eleanor Grace Parker from consideration as a beneficiary, effective immediately. The words hang in the air. Jenna's face crumples, smiles, and for a moment, I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. You can't do that, she whispers. I can and I have, my grandmother says firmly. The trust gives me that discretion, especially in light of your admitted deception. Jenna turns to me, desperation in her eyes. We could share it, she says quickly. Half for Eleanor, half for Sophie. They're both innocent in all this. Why should either of them suffer? The audacity of her suggestion leaves me speechless. After everything she's done, she still thinks she's entitled to half? No, I say finally. You don't get to steal something and then negotiate to keep part of it. Please, Jenna begs, reaching across the table toward me. We've been friends since we were 12. Doesn't that count for anything? It counted for everything, I reply, my voice breaking slightly. That's why your betrayal hurts so much. You knew what my grandmother meant to me. You knew what the name Eleanor meant to our family, and you took it anyway. For $5 million, my grandmother adds coldly. Derek stands abruptly. I need some air. He walks out without looking at Jenna, the door closing firmly behind him. Goldstein sighs. Perhaps we should take a short break. I don't think that's necessary, Martin says. We've established the facts. Mrs. Parker has admitted to naming her daughter with knowledge of the trust, which violates the intention and family connection requirement. The trust has been amended to clarify that spiritual legacy is as important as the name itself, and Miss Williams, as trustee, has exercised her discretion to remove Eleanor Grace Parker from consideration. We'll challenge this in court, Goldstein warns, but his tone lacks conviction. You're welcome to try, Martin replies calmly, but I should warn you that courts are generally reluctant to override trustee discretion without clear evidence of bad faith. And given Mrs. Parker's admission today on record, I think you'll find your position quite weak. Jenna stands, tears streaming down her face. This isn't fair. My daughter is innocent in all this. Yes, she is. My grandmother agrees. And I'm sorry she has a mother who would use her as a pawn in a scheme to steal from family friends. Jenna turns to me one last time. Please, we can work something out, for the girl's sake. I look at her, really look at her, and see a stranger wearing my best friend's face. There's nothing to work out, Jenna. You made your choice when you decided $5 million was worth more than our friendship. That's not fair, she protests. I was thinking about Eleanor's future. No, I say quietly. You were thinking about yourself. After they leave, Martin turns off the recording device. That went better than expected. Her admission on record makes any legal challenge virtually impossible. My grandmother nods, satisfaction evident in her expression. It's done then, but it doesn't feel done. It feels like something precious has been irreparably broken. As we gather our things to leave, I find myself thinking about all the milestones Jenna and I had planned to share our daughters growing up together. First days of school, birthday parties, holidays, all of that is gone now, sacrificed for money. In the parking lot, Jenna is waiting by my car. Her eyes are red and swollen, her makeup streaked down her cheeks. I know you hate me right now, she says before I can speak, but please, just listen. I made a terrible mistake. I let greed cloud my judgment, and I betrayed your trust. I'm so sorry. Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught? I ask, keys clutched tightly in my hand. Both, she admits, and the honesty surprises me. I never thought it would come to this. I don't know what I thought, that you wouldn't find out, that you'd forgive me, that it wouldn't matter because we'd still be friends. How could we possibly still be friends after what you did? She wipes her eyes. I don't know, but our daughters are innocent in all this. They could still grow up together, be friends like we were. The thought of Sophie and Eleanor playing together, going to school together, sharing birthdays and milestones, it hurts in a way I didn't expect, because despite everything, there's a part of me that still mourns the future we'd planned. I can't. I say finally. I can't pretend everything is okay. I can't trust you anymore, Jenna, and I won't put Sophie in a position where she might get hurt by your choices. I would never hurt Sophie, she protests. You already have, I reply. You stole what was meant for her future. You betrayed her mother's trust. Those aren't the actions of someone I want in my daughter's life. Jenna's shoulders slump in defeat. What can I do to make this right? Nothing, I say simply. Some things can't be fixed. As I drive away, I glance in my rearview mirror and see her standing alone in the parking lot, a small figure growing smaller with distance. The friend I thought I knew, the future we'd planned together, all of it receding into the past where it now belongs. My phone rings through the car speakers. It's my mother. How did it go? She asks. She admitted everything. I say, my voice steadier than I feel. It's over. Are you okay? I consider the question as I stop at a red light. Am I okay? No, not really. I've lost my best friend. I've learned that someone I trusted completely was willing to betray me for money. That's not something you just get over. I say finally. I'm going to pick up Sophie now. Give her a kiss for me. Already did, my mother says. Twice. The light turns green, and I drive forward, toward my daughter, toward our future. A future that's different than the one I'd imagined, but still full of possibility. Some legacies aren't about names at all. They're about values, about choices, about the kind of person you decide to be when faced with temptation. My grandmother understood that all along. And someday, when Sophie is old enough to understand, I'll tell her this story not to teach her about betrayal, but to show her the true meaning of legacy. The judge looks like he's about to fall asleep. I can't blame him. Legal proceedings about trust amendments aren't exactly thrilling cinema, but for me, every word exchanged in this courtroom represents my daughter's future. So I sit straight backed in my uncomfortable wooden chair, hanging on every syllable. The court finds no compelling reason to override the trustee's discretion in this matter, the judge announces, shuffling papers with liver-spotted hands. Mrs. Williams acted within her rights as both grantor and trustee when amending the trust to clarify the meaning of legacy. The amendment stands. My grandmother reaches over and squeezes my hand so hard I almost wince. Her face remains impassive, but I can feel her triumph in that grip. Across the aisle, Jenna's shoulders slump visibly. Derek isn't with her today, hasn't been with her for any of the court proceedings. I heard through mutual friends that he moved out 3 weeks ago. Furthermore, the judge continues, given the evidence presented regarding Mrs. Parker's knowledge of the trust prior to naming her daughter, the court finds that the trustee's determination that Eleanor Grace Parker does not meet the intention and family connection requirement is reasonable and appropriate. It's over. After months of legal wrangling, depositions, depositions and stress, it's finally over. The trust money, all $5 million of it, will go to Sophie, just as my grandmother always intended. Not because of her name, but because of what she represents, the true continuation of my grandmother's legacy. Outside the courthouse, Martin shakes my grandmother's hand, his expression satisfied. Exactly the outcome we expected. Their case was weak from the start, especially after that recorded admission. Thank you, Martin, my grandmother says. Please see to it that the funds are transferred to Sophie's educational account immediately. Of course, I'll have the paperwork ready tomorrow. As Martin walks away, my grandmother turns to me. It's done, she says simply. Sophie's future is secure. I nod, but my eyes drift to where Jenna stands alone by the courthouse steps, staring at her phone. She looks smaller somehow, diminished. For a moment, I almost go to her, some instinct from 15 years of friendship, making me want to comfort her. But then I remember why we're here, what she tried to take from Sophie, and I stay where I am. Let's go home, my grandmother says, following my gaze. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned. 2 weeks later, I'm scrolling through social media when I see it. Jenna's moving announcement. There's a picture of her and Eleanor standing in front of a for sale sign with the caption, "New beginnings for the Parker girls, saying goodbye to bad memories and toxic people as we start fresh in Denver." The comments are filled with supportive messages from people who've only heard her side of the story. So brave. You deserve better. Their loss. It's strange seeing myself cast as the villain in someone else's narrative, but I suppose that's how these things go. Everyone is the hero of their own story. I click on her profile and see she's been busy rewriting history. According to her recent posts, I betrayed her by manipulating my grandmother to change the trust rules. She claims I was jealous that her daughter was born first and that I couldn't stand that she used the name Eleanor. There's no mention of the $5 million she tried to steal, of course. No mention of her recorded confession. I consider commenting, setting the record straight. My fingers hover over the keyboard for a long moment before I close the app instead. The people who matter know the truth. The rest isn't worth my energy. What are you looking at? My mother asks, coming into the living room with Sophie in her arms. My daughter is getting so big, almost walking now, babbling constantly, her personality emerging more every day. Nothing important, I say, putting my phone away. Just ghosts. My mother gives me a knowing look. She's been my rock through all of this, stepping in to watch Sophie during court dates, listening to me cry when the stress became too much. Let it go, she advises gently. Some people will never admit they were wrong, even to themselves. She's right, of course. I take Sophie from her, breathing in my daughter's sweet baby smell. "Want to go see great-grandma today?" I ask her, and she bounces excitedly in my arms. At 15 months old, Sophie already recognizes my grandmother's name, already lights up at the mention of a visit. My grandmother's house is filled with afternoon sunlight when we arrive. She's waiting for us in the garden, seated in her favorite wicker chair, a book open on her lap. At 78, she's still formidable, back straight, mind sharp, not a hair out of place. But there's a softness to her now when she looks at Sophie, a tenderness I rarely saw in my childhood. "There she is," my grandmother says as Sophie toddles toward her on unsteady legs. "My little legacy." Sophie reaches her and immediately begins babbling, showing her the small rock she found in the driveway as if it's a precious gem. My grandmother listens with complete attention, nodding seriously at appropriate intervals. "She has your curiosity," my grandmother tells me as I sit in the chair beside her, "always examining things, figuring out how they work. And your stubbornness," I reply with a smile. "Once she decides she wants something, there's no changing her mind." My grandmother laughs. "A good quality in a woman. The world will try to change her mind about many things." We sit in comfortable silence for a while, watching Sophie explore the garden. She stops to examine a butterfly on a flower, her little face a picture of concentration and wonder. "The money has been transferred," my grandmother says eventually. $5 million. In a trust that Sophie can access for educational expenses now and will fully control when she turns 25. I nod, still watching Sophie. "Thank you for fighting for her." "I was fighting for all of us," my grandmother replies. "For what's right, for the true meaning of legacy." She pauses, then adds more softly, "I won't be here forever. I needed to know that what I built, what I value, it continues." I turn to look at her, suddenly alarmed by the weariness in her voice. "Are you feeling okay?" She waves away my concern. "Just tired. It's been a long battle." She reaches for my hand, but worth every moment. "Sophie will have opportunities that weren't available to me, to your mother. That's what matters." Later that evening, as I'm helping her prepare dinner, she tells me she's updated her will. "Most of my estate will go directly to Sophie when I'm gone," she explains, chopping vegetables with precise movements. "But I've set aside a portion for you as well." "Grandma, I don't need." "It's not about need," she interrupts. "It's about what I want, and I want to make sure you're taken care of too." She sets down her knife and looks at me directly. "You stood by me through all of this. You didn't let Jenna manipulate you or make you doubt what was right. I'm proud of you." The words catch me off guard, bringing unexpected tears to my eyes. My grandmother has never been effusive with praise. "Thank you," I manage. She nods once, then returns to her chopping. "The money isn't the real legacy anyway," she says after a moment. "It's the values, the character. Sophie will have both." 3 months later, my grandmother passes away in her sleep. The doctor says it was her heart peaceful, painless. She was ready, he tells us, as if that's supposed to make it easier. The funeral is well attended. My grandmother knew many people, touched many lives. Jenna doesn't come, of course. She's in Denver now, building her new life, telling her version of our story to anyone who will listen. After the service, Martin pulls me aside. "Your grandmother asked me to give you this," he says, handing me an envelope. "She wrote it the day after the court decision." I wait until I'm alone to open it. Inside is a single sheet of paper with my grandmother's elegant handwriting. "My dearest granddaughter, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Don't grieve too much. I've lived a full life and am ready for whatever comes next. I want you to know that watching you stand firm in the face of Jenna's betrayal gave me more pride than perhaps anything else in my life. It's easy to do the right thing when it costs you nothing. It's much harder when it costs you a friendship, when it requires you to face conflict and pain. Sophie may not carry my name, but she carries something far more important. She She carries the strength and integrity that I've seen in you. That's the true legacy, not the money, not the name. Tell her about me when she's old enough to understand. Tell her that her great-grandmother loved her fiercely, that I saw in her the continuation of everything I valued most. And remember that while some people will disappoint you, others will surprise you with their loyalty and love. Focus on those people. They're the ones who matter. All my love, Eleanor. I fold the letter carefully and tuck it into my pocket. Outside, the sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Sophie is with my mother, probably getting spoiled with cookies and stories. My phone buzzes with a notification, another post from Jenna, this one about how she's rising from the ashes and showing Eleanor what real strength looks like. I delete the notification without opening it. Some legacies are loud, demanding attention and recognition. They're inscribed on buildings and announced in names. But the most important legacies are quieter. They live in the values we pass down, in the character we instill, in the love that continues long after we're gone. Sophie may not be named Eleanor, but as I drive home to my daughter, I know with absolute certainty that my grandmother's legacy is safe in her hands. Not because of the $5 million sitting in a trust with her name on it, but because of who she'll become, a woman with strength, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what's right. That's a legacy worth more than any amount of money. That's a legacy that will truly last.